If
Greetings
others,
in the love and light of the one infinite creator. I am Andrii Zvorygin, and I'm here with Robert and Edward and Fred and Adam and Shar and Benny. All right, so we will be reading the. Oh, hold on. There's some static over there, and we will be reading this session from September 29, 2024. Who's got the okay, Shar, I think you're having some noise over there, so I'm going to mute you. Okay. Balancing the overemphasis of development of the minds, serving those with mental disorders, violence in the Middle East, and sharing a spiritual life without infringement on the free will of others. All right. Here, I'm just going to make that a bit bigger for our audience. Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. And first, I would just like to say I'm grateful to be able to be a carrier of the message of Ko'o for this group. I'm grateful and I'm ever blessed doing so. I am Ko'o. We greet this circle in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We are honored and joyed beyond words to be called to this group and to this circle to join you as brothers and sisters on your path of seeking. Throughout your time together in these past days, we have been with you, for we have been called by you both explicitly and quietly within your hearts. In every moment of magic generated this weekend, we have tasted the magic contained in each interaction. It has been a pleasure beyond words for us to be with you. As we said, we join you as fellow humble seekers upon the path. We do not come to you in order to give directive, but rather to share what we have witnessed upon our own journeys. For we may have traveled but a bit further than you and have seen things that are hidden from you within your density, and we wish to report those things to you. But we do not wish to infringe upon your own journey or act as a stumbling block for you. And so we would offer our perennial request and disclaimer, and that is that in any word or thought that is shared with you today, that you take only those that have some use to you, whatever that use may be. And if anything that we share does not hold resonance or value for you, that you leave it aside. If you grant us this request, it will allow us to speak more freely and more openly to the questions that you have brought to us today. We are grateful for your presence and your companionship on this journey. At this time, we would ask if there is a query to which we may respond. I want to comment real quick.
Okay, sure.
Do you notice, though, that they say that if the listener grants them that request, it allows them to speak more freely?
Yes.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. It's because they don't have to feel like they have to be the authority or super accurate, or that their words might be used as dogma to hurt someone or something like that. Because that's usually what dogma is used as, is as a service to self way of infringing on others by saying, oh, you didn't do exactly what this was. But by saying that, if you don't like it, leave it aside, then it's honoring everyone's free will. And so they're able to speak with their own free will as well.
It's removing controlling features of it all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, all right. Seekers, right? Even them.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good. Nice, succinct little thing. Yes, thank you, Kuo. In Western societies, there seems to be a disproportionate focus on developing and working in the mind complex. Can you give us guidance or suggestions for avenues or systems to develop the work more with the body and spirit complexes? How can the choice of polarity be expressed in the body and spirit complexes?
I am Quo and am aware of the query, my sister. We are grateful for the opportunity to speak to this query, for as the questioner has observed, we too observe a certain imbalance in how what was called the Western culture has developed and progressed in terms of the focus of what is developed and what is utilized. We would offer some slight clarifications and opinions upon the framing of this question, and in doing so, we hope to address the heart of the query. Indeed, within your Western cultures, there seems to be a great focus upon the development of the mind. We would emphasize that this development takes place within the very analytical and conscious and rational aspects of the mind, and it is here that we find this imbalance. For the nature and the work of the mind is much greater than that which has been focused upon by your Western culture, so to speak. To speak about the body complex and the spirit complex and how to further develop those in service and in the choice of polarity would be to overlook the fact that the mind, the body, and the spirit operate in unison. And so this overemphasis upon a particular aspect of the mind does necessitate a correction within this perception of the mind and what it has to offer to you as seekers upon the path. And so to speak about how to further develop the body complex and the spirit complex and utilize these aspects of self for service will require addressing and correcting an imbalance of the activity of the mind complex itself. That is where we would begin in addressing this query, that while there is a great advantage of the type of development given to the mind in the so-called Western thought, in this analytical and rational thinking, there is a downside in that the mind is incredibly active. The mind reaches and grasps constantly and is not still. This stillness is essential for further work upon the self. So it may be of no surprise to you that we would offer our regular suggestion to all seekers who wish to further their method of service and self-awareness, that a regular practice of meditation, whatever kind and flavor of meditation resonates most with the self, is the most important aspect of beginning this work. The cultivation of stillness within the self, within the mind, is a prerequisite to begin to understand and form a relationship with the body complex and with the spirit complex. We cannot emphasize this enough, for the mind does play a central role for you as seekers. This is partly why those who have offered themselves to developing your Western thought in relationship to the mind have given it such focus. For it is that which receives the input from the body and receives the inspiration from the spirit and utilizes and integrates these aspects of self to progress along the path and offer the self in service. So this prerequisite of utter importance must be maintained before further developing your relationships with the body and the spirit. With this practice in place, you can begin first to develop a gentle and friendly and loving relationship with the body complex. This requires the stillness of mind, because you must become aware of the communication offered to you by the body complex. Those things that you experience as sensations, as pleasure, as pain, as movement, as stillness of the body. All of these must be perceived and brought into the mind in open and loving acceptance, to be understood and balanced by the self. This is the important progression from mind to body. We can offer only broad suggestions for how to specifically develop this relationship. Each body complex is unique, and the way that the mind will perceive and relate to the body is unique. But we are aware that there are many, many systems and philosophies upon your planet that are specifically designed to help grow the relationship and the link between the body and the mind. In this instrument's mind, the most common form of this cultivation of linking the body and the mind is called yoga. But this is but one system wherein the body and the mind are explicitly drawn together in a regular practice and focused upon together. You may find one of these explicit systems yourself, or you may develop your own intimate relationship with your body and how it wishes to develop its own relationship with your mind. For it does have its own intelligence, its own desires, its own method of seeking. And if the mind is quiet enough to listen, it can be received and integrated into the regular spiritual practice on top of that prerequisite of meditation that we have mentioned. This is the next step upon that path, for this is also what you might call a prerequisite to the work. That spirit, the mind, and the body are in harmonious relationship. The ability to be still or to move with conscious intent, with harmonious merging of the desires of mind and body, is of utter importance in order to begin what may be called the work of spirit. This next step is most difficult to elaborate upon with your language, for the spirit complex in itself is whole and perfect. In our perception, as we are able to see the nature of the spirit, particularly in time-space, there is no work that needs to be done upon the spirit, for it is already a full, complete realization of the self as the one infinite creator. But rather it is how the mind perceives and realizes and brings the gifts of spirit into the self that may be worked upon. Understanding this innate wholeness of the spirit and realizing that it is you, that it is a perfect representation of you as the one infinite creator, and that it can function as your gateway to tap into the infinite potential of the one infinite creator, can bring to you the integrated functioning of the mind, the body, and the spirit together so that you may move in service. We emphasize that serving within your third density is indeed a necessity of integrating these three aspects of self. For the body plays the important function of allowing you to interface and to move within your density to interact with others. The mind cannot do this alone, and the spirit has no way to bring the gifts of the creator into your realm without the consent and the functioning and the movement of the body as directed by the mind. We hope that we have painted a picture of an integrated being wherein the mind is balanced and the imbalance of the Western thought and emphasis upon rationality and intellect is quieted, so that you, as a mind-body-spirit complex, grasping your perfection and wholeness through the Spirit, can offer this inspiration and infinite potential that is shuttled to you through the Spirit with your world. And in doing so, you will realize the perfection around you, the beauty of all things that you can witness and interact with, all things that your mind perceives and that your body may contact and feel contain the wholeness and the perfection of the infinite creation. Is there another query to which we may respond?
All right. Thank you very much, Robert. That was excellent. Reading. Fred would like to speak. Go ahead, Fred.
I just want to point out how interesting it is to hear us in the West get beat up so bad by Quo.
Wow, I don't know if beat up is the term, but I think that
You know what? I'm being silly, but still,
yeah,
I think that that's on purpose. That they're specifically not just because we are in the West and that's where the questioners are coming from, but I'm learning a methodology now that actually is doing exactly what we're talking about here, blending the mind, body, and spirit. Last night, the class was on the body and meditating specifically on each organ, in a specific way, and very interesting, very effective. And that's what they're talking about. Those are all Eastern traditions. What we're learning is Egyptian and Chinese. So they figured certain things out a while ago. They just kind of stagnated, I guess, there with just that. If you took all these different practices and methodologies that are orienting themselves toward the goal of being unified with the creator, and they're not some dogmatic, kill everyone that doesn't believe what we believe type religion. If you look at those types of philosophies and combine them, I think it would be absolutely mind-blowingly powerful. And I think that's probably what we're working on with the SMC and the internet and everything else going on.
Arguably, that's what theosophy was.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if theosophy was that, but I know that recently, I don't know if it was last session, but there was a quote that if you have the intellect without love, then no matter how smooth and your thoughts are, there's no content without love. And I think that's part of the issue here, is that there's a lot of in Western thought, like philosophy, like the whole realm of philosophy, it is just people using their intellect to make smooth ideas which have no content. They have no bearing. They don't help anybody. It's just they're adding words and putting them together without being of service to anybody. And so it's only when we have that love and we're using the intellect with love where we can actually make service and content. And in terms of what we were reading just now, I definitely agree with what Fred was saying, that there's a strong hint of that Oriental flavor. Like, I know Antonio was here before, and basically in Buddhism, like Tibetan Buddhism, there is the 6 layers of consciousness. There is like the external, and there's how you perceive it, and then all these things. And then the highest level is the observer. It is just where you are aware of you are the observer. You are the one observing everything else going on in your mind. And I think that's the state that you have to get to in order to be able to properly witness your body for what they were talking about. Though I'm sure you could try it at lower levels too and still have benefit. And
Yeah,
then-
I think I'll skip practicing the Tibetan Buddhism. I know someone that they were on the Bledsoe Sensei podcast, and they went there for I think they went for 3 weeks and stayed for 3 weeks. I don't know if I would have stayed 3 weeks. You were not allowed to speak of your visions, of anything you saw, anything you experienced. You were supposed to experience nothingness, and if you spoke about it, they beat you with a cane.
That's Zen Buddhism. That has nothing to do with Tibetan Buddhism.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was that. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought it was Tibetan.
That's Zen. That's Zen.
I don't
yeah,
want nobody
Zen-
beating me because I saw something. Jesus,
Yeah,
criminy.
no.
You know what I see?
Yeah, Zen is it's very far from the homeland of Buddhism, which is Nepal, and so they only have kind of a very small amount of the teaching. Maybe less than the minimum. All they know is that it has something to do with meditation, and they don't know anything else about it. So shut up and don't say anything, because then you're going to make us look like fools. Whereas in Tibet, they were right next to Nepal and India, and so they were able to get, they have like that library with like 100, like thousands of these books, and so they have lots of visions. Most of their meditations are about different kinds of visualizations. They have thousands of different kinds of visualization meditations. So, it's a completely different thing. Tibetan Buddhism and the kind of Zen Buddhism that is popular in North America have almost no relationship. I mean, other than they're called Buddhism. Okay, Ed, go ahead.
No, I'm trying to be all nice and not interrupt.
Very good.
But
Very good.
Come
Thank
on,
you.
dude.
You're doing an excellent job.
What I was going to say was the final line of the way of Zen, being the kind of major text on the subject, is if I punch you in the head, what will you do? That is Zen.
Well, yes, they like koans. It's true. Various statements that aren't supposed to have an answer. Okay, so let's review this a little bit more, and then so the AI picked out a few sections that it felt were important. Overemphasis on the analytical. So the mind, the body, and the spirit operate in unison. Addressing and correcting an imbalance in the mind complex is the first step. So we want it to all operate in unison. The power of stillness. The cultivation of stillness within the self is a prerequisite to understand and form a relationship with the body complex and the spirit complex. And so, yes, so that stillness is important. And that is gathered through meditation. But yeah, certainly you don't need to get beaten with a stick about it. Okay, the body has its own intelligence, its own desires. If the mind is quiet enough to listen, it can be integrated into spiritual practice. That is an interesting kind of perspective, and also I think that this dovetails with like spiritual healing, where kind of
Alexa, set timer.
Timer for how long?
Oh, Adam. Okay, the wholeness of the spirit complex. Spirit is whole and perfect. So yeah, that was one thing we haven't touched upon. Understanding this can unlock for the service integration. So, kind of once you figure out, once you can listen to your body, once you can still your mind and listen to your body, and then unite with the perfection of spirit. Is that how it is, Ed?
Yeah, no, finish what you're saying, dude. I just had something to say after.
Oh yeah, that was. I was asking a question.
That you're muted, Ed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't. I put my hand up so for when you finish. Then.
Oh, okay. Well. Yeah. My question was, do you feel that what they're saying we should do is to quiet the mind, listen to the body, and accept the perfection of the spirit, and let the spirit lead us in our lives. Because they were saying here at the end that the mind cannot do this alone. The spirit has no way of bringing the gifts of the creator into your realm without the consent and functioning of the movement of the body as directed by the mind. So really what we should be doing is coordinating all of these things so that the spirit can bring the gifts of the creator into our realm, using us as a vessel.
And it's unique for each individual entity, too, the exact pathways to do that.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, Ed, go ahead.
Solve Caligula.
Yes, as above, so below.
No.
No?
This you coagulate and resolve. So essentially, the way that the alchemical system works is, you dissolve the salt, being the mind, into the body, being the corpus. Yes, as in you go into the body. Yeah, then you distill out the ego to go to the spirit, which is pure and knows everything. While you are up there, you learn what you need to bring back, and then you coagulate and resolve back down to ground, bringing what you learned in meditation back to the real world. It is the alchemical method spoken massively. I'm sorry, don't want to monopolize everybody's time.
You did a great job. You did a great job articulating this point in a succinct and constrained way. Thank you, Ed.
Awesome job, Ed. Dr. Ed.
Yeah, see, it was powerful. It was powerful because it had an ending, and then you had a whole complete thought. It was awesome.
Dude, they all have endings. I have lots of complete thoughts. Whether I'm allowed to finish them or not is one thing or another.
Okay, well, you are an amazing person, and we really appreciate your presence. All right, Robert, let's go on to the second one.
Say one thing before.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
We're in Malcolm X Park, but there's no Malcolm X here. You know.
Oh no.
No.
Is that Abraham Lincoln?
I don't. Maybe it says BVCHANAN. Then you got two men there.
Oh, okay.
I like the little guy peering over, on his right shoulder, but whatever.
So you're bringing the teachings of the Confederation to DC.
Yep.
Amazing.
No, next time I'll go to the Lincoln Memorial. I can set that up even if it's close. So fucking, it doesn't matter.
Good night, Shar.
Yeah. Good night, Shar. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Good night, Shar.
Good night, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah. Bye. Yeah, Adam, did you have any reflections on this before we move on, or no? Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next question. Yes. Second question from the circle is: how can service be provided to those people who suffer from mental disorders?
I am Quo, and I am aware of the query, my brother. We are honored to receive this query, but we would emphasize first and foremost that in questions of how service may be offered, the one to be served should be the first to be asked how they may be served. We understand that this is likely understood already by the questioner, but we wish to emphasize that service can only be offered as it is requested. And we cannot speak on behalf of anybody, including those who you might consider to have any sort of disorder or mental configuration. But we can share with you our perception of this interaction of service, of what your society and culture has called mental disorder, and would ask you, as seekers wishing to provide service for those of this disorder, to take a step back, so to speak, and look at the whole picture of your society and how it has defined what is a disorder versus what is normal functioning of your mind and of your brain. For you may find that in doing so, there is a great distorted realization of your society, of what disorders are and why these individuals may need service. Whatever configuration exists within their mind complex and within their biological brain, it is often your society, your culture, your social complex that puts these individuals at odds and creates the suffering and the necessity for service to be offered. It is important to realize that these individuals are not innately non-functioning, but rather they are of this distortion in relationship to your social complex that is built by you and by your other selves. It is the very definition of the disorder put upon them that can cause this suffering. We are not intending to convey that such a label should be considered offensive or useless, but rather that the label should be expanded to not just include the individual, but your society as well.
You think they have a disorder. Your society has a disorder.
I look, seriously, I got a mate that's got schizophrenia. There's absolutely no way society causes that shit at all.
Okay.
Quo thanks you for having humor. For it is also disordered, that is society, is also disordered, and it is in this disorder that any individual that is suffering comes upon that suffering. To speak even more directly to the heart of this query, we would emphasize that in interacting with any other self you wish to serve, particularly those who, due to the distortions of your society, may seem to be disordered, may cause some discomfort or confusion in how they perceive reality, how they interact with other selves, and how they present themselves to the world. First and foremost, they are the one infinite creator, just as you and just as we. They are whole and perfect in the ultimate view of the creation. There is no change that you must enforce upon them in order to bring healing or relieve the suffering. Understand that this is how service can be offered to any individual, by bringing them into the heart, where all are equal and all are seen as their true nature, as the one infinite creator. This is a foundation upon which you may stand in order to offer service. And further, as you interact with these individuals, understand that there is not one way in which service can be offered. That by tapping into this heart of love and understanding of this individual, the needs of the moment will present themselves and communicate to you with their own intelligence how you may serve. This requires deep listening and receiving of the other self. This requires you to be willing to extend yourself in service, but to not overextend yourself so that you are infringing upon the free will of the other. It is inevitable within your third density that in the attempt to offer such service, things may go awry, particularly when you are attempting to serve such an individual who your society has labeled as disordered and who has difficulty expressing themselves within the order of your society. As you stumble and as things go awry, understand that this is the nature of third density. Though you desire to be of service, your actions may have results that are unintended. Attempting to serve those called mental disordered is particularly sensitive and has a high chance of resulting in such stumbling. And so we encourage seekers to cultivate a deep understanding and sensitivity by exposing yourself to the wisdom and knowledge of those who have dedicated their lives studying and understanding such distortions, whether within the confines of your current paradigm or outside of it. And when there is some stumbling and difficulty in offering the service, we encourage you to consider that though your intentions may have been towards aiding the individual, if your actions have resulted in anything else, that the responsibility is still upon the one who performed the action to provide restitution, whatever that may look like. These interactions, the stumbling, the attempts, and the perceived failure are the function of third density, and your persistence in the attempt to serve and to restore anything that may have been broken are your path of service. This is the heart of service to others within your third density. We would reiterate our previous message that in any attempt to serve, the understanding that all is one, that the other self who you are attempting to serve, who you perceive as having a mental disorder, is you, and you are them. This is the heart of what will bring healing eventually to you and to them and to your planet as a whole. This is the message that we, the Confederation of Planets in the service of the one infinite creator, bring to you in all of our messages. That all that is broken will be healed, that all is whole, and that all is perfect. And the heart of what you have to do here is to simply look inside and realize this, and then shine that realization outward continually through each challenge that you encounter. And the more that you do this, the more you polarize the self and prepare not just yourself, but this planet for the harvest and the transition and the celebration of fourth density. At this time, we would transfer the contact to the one known as Gary. We are Quo.
Thank you, Robert. That was excellent.
Thank
And
you. Love you.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. And so, and I just wanted to say, Ed, actually, I read this book called Games People Play, and it actually had a strong case that schizophrenia is a learned behavior based on how their parents interacted with them. And it was
As a neuroscientist, we can say pretty much specifically it's about how branches of neuroplasticity work where they jump between zones they're not supposed to. Therefore, you can essentially have a lot of information stored in one area of the brain, and it has a perfect link to get there. Yeah, you might wake up the next morning and that link changes position. So you no longer have any access to that, or that view of reality would have changed dramatically. The main causal thing that they think might start it is actually toxoplasma gondii infection when you're a small baby. That means that you don't have the immune system to stop it. It makes changes in the dopamine system, which then leads to that neuroplasticity behavior. I'm not sure what book you read, but I'm just telling you the science.
Okay, well, I hear you, but it's just the book I was reading, it basically said that a very similar thing, that basically they are brought up in an environment where that is their best survival strategy, is talking about something that's completely tangential or completely at a perpendicular angle to what is being said. Because I know I've been diagnosed, with many disorders, including schizophrenia multiple times. And well, it is what it is. Maybe it's society that's disordered. All right. Hey, Adam.
Yo,
Schizophrenia.
yo, yo, yo. So before
Schizophrenia
I
is a
walk
very, very
home,
specific
this is
condition, dude. And like,
block
you
some
know, it
Beacon.
can cause unbelievable
Oh,
changes.
Benny's
It's
trying
not
to say
something to
something.
woo woo. It's a real like terrible thing.
Let him go. I can say it.
Okay. Okay.
Or
What
can
is
I
it,
go?
Benny? What is it,
Well,
Benny?
I'm over here in DC. So this is from Beacon Palace in Scotland. They brought over each individual block on boat and rebuilt this wall from a palace all the way down there. That's all I wanted to tell y'all. Y'all go back on your day.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Benny.
Yep.
Quotes regarding. Yeah, I'll try to hunt it down for you. But anyways, Robert or Adam or Fred, did you guys have any commentary on the questions we just read about mental health?
I don't think I'm qualified to discuss that. My mental health isn't exactly on par with being able to sort through that one.
Okay.
Well, I've been typically called unusual myself. And I like how this little town I live in, there's like 200 some special abilities people, young adults and children. And they're the only ones who ever laugh when I tell them the name of my dog, and I appreciate the laughter because it's meant to be cute and funny. The ones who are so-called typical neurotypicals don't laugh when I tell them my dog's name.
What's your dog's name?
Toby Tailwagger.
Toby Tailwagger.
And when you're looking at him, and you
reasonable
see
name.
when you're looking at him, you go, "It's Toby Tailwagger,"
Because he likes to wag his tail. It makes sense.
He's wagging his tail. He's smiling.
That's great. Sounds like a really happy dog.
And it's these so-called special ability children who always laugh when I tell them that, and I express gratitude to them for laughing. I say, "Thank you. That's beautiful," because it is. That's what I wanted. I wanted somebody to do that. The so-called normal adults just kind of go, "Oh, okay," and I don't know how to react to that. I'm not sure how to carry on the conversation to such a cold, flat, "Oh, that's nice."
You don't, Robert. You do what I do. When someone that can be viewed in your mind however you want, but I would view that as, well, you're disrespecting the whole concept of me having an ear. So I now know that I'm not going to be hanging out with you. So
Right.
That's
why I'm typically alone, Fred.
Yeah. And like my dog's names are Snickers and Rolo and everything else. And so it gets a reaction, and then other people that are, like you said, neurotypical, they're like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Like, yeah, I know I'm not gonna have a drink with you.
Yeah, they're bored. I don't know why.
Yes. Okay. So, Ed, go ahead.
I didn't actually say anything in my bit. What I would like to say is, I don't know. Like, I feel bad because I'm gonna tell a story and.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I had some really, 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 really messed up happen to me this week. Really, really bad. Okay, so I have a friend. His name's Johnny. He's no one can describe him as the sanest of people. He describes himself as Thor Jesus. Just as a standard way of introducing himself. The guy is 6 foot whatever. He is a bricklayer. So his hand could probably crush your skull. But he's one of my closest friends. Love him to bits. I see him all the time. But the other day we were on the phone, and he said that he was sending me telepathic messages yeah, and that I was doing stuff because he was controlling me. So I said, please don't do that. If you are doing that, stay the fuck out of my head. Either way, there's no ever any reason to be going in my head and controlling me or saying anything or anything. I give you no permission to come into my head. You know, I don't think that he was, but in his head he thought he was.
Okay.
And me saying that he wasn't allowed meant that I was one of the enemy, and that we were at war now. Now, Andrii, you know, respect to whatever else, yeah, and you know what Quo was saying, respect to Quo and whatever else, but I thought the creator was going to come round and kill me, and I'm not joking. This guy seriously could have done, and there is a real risk that he was going to, and that is purely because of mental illness. There's got nothing to do with society. There's got nothing to do with any of that. It's because he has got a neurological issue in his brain where he isn't wired right, and all it takes is one sentence, and his view of reality is so odd and warped and twisted, and nothing you can say will change that, and that is his mental illness. Okay, Andrii, you're going to tell me that he's a creation of something? No, dude, the guy.
Yeah,
it doesn't
are you going to let me talk?
He will change it in his head.
So I would have to disagree with you because I believe
Wait
that.
a second, dude.
Can I finish? Let me finish.
I disagree with what happened.
I can agree with what happened, but I can disagree with you claiming that this is just all purely him and that society is completely innocent.
Okay, I'm telling you that, yeah. The neurological issue in his brain is what's to blame. And I'm saying that that's not something society can cause in a person. There's many mental conditions. A huge most of that library of textbooks is conditions that society does cause. And I'm not going to argue with you there, Andrii. You can put your hand up, whatever else. I'm just saying to you that schizophrenia is different, and it's not something that has any like environmental things. You can come from any type of home, in any type of environment. You can be raised in any kind of way. When you get to a teenage boy or a middle-aged woman, these things can kick in. Doesn't matter what you've done. And when they do, your entire world can completely change in a sentence, mate. I'm just saying.
I know exactly what he's going through. And I've had lots of people I know who have gone through similar things.
He doesn't know what he's going through.
He's
in a mental institution right now, dude. He does not know what's going on.
Okay. That may be why he doesn't know what's going on. But because our society doesn't know how to support or help people.
No, he was going to go on a killing spree. Because he can, and in his head he thinks he's all right to do that because he thinks he thought Jesus. Seriously, dude, it's not society, man. Some people just have issues up there.
Who gave him the idea of Thor Jesus?
What is real?
Society. Who gave him the idea that we're not supposed to use every catalyst to forgive, love, and accept and be kind?
If there wasn't society, he would be out killing things with his bare hands all the time, relentlessly, and he would get whatever crazy reason in his head that had nothing to do with society to do it. Because that's just how he thinks, mate.
Like you're coming from a place of fear.
Agree to disagree on this one, man, because there's no way.
Okay, we can agree to disagree. Hello, Ashley. Ashley, you have joined twice. I don't know if either of them have been successful.
I accept him. At no point in any of this judgment, at no point is any of me saying anything other than I love him for what he is. I accept him. He has since apologized and doesn't want to kill me anymore. And I love him. That has not changed.
Ashley's trying to speak. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear you love him. Okay, Ashley, what were you saying?
I was saying that I joined twice because once it was in the app and then the other time was in the mobile browser. So that's just how I have to do it in order to like connect and hear the sound.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm glad you figured out a way. And actually, I've also made it so that people can call in, but then you have to pay for the phone charge.
That. Yeah. That's so
It's a backup.
I,
It's a backup.
it works though if you're having technical difficulties, and then most people should have unlimited talk text in 2024. But remember when we had to pay 25 cents a minute or
Yo, so
whatever
we're
that
about to
was?
start walking up on one of the Scottish Rite Mason temples. I'm gonna show you. But it's not the one with the tunnel from the White House. That one is a little bit down the street, but you'll see it when we go to the White House next week. I can sit in their little protest zone and do our group. So
Cool. Bene's broadcasting our podcast in Washington, D.C. to spread the message of love and peace.
next time there's
Oh, awesome.
bro, it's gonna be lit.
Well, thank you for that service.
That's what they want. So okay, but here's a Scottish Rite. This is one monument I wanted to show you. You know, I was talking to these guys about it, and this is a Scottish Rite temple.
Mm-hmm.
But this, you see all the polarizes and the trees of lives down below with the little globe in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
quite a statue.
Yeah, that's quite a statue. Here, I get the front. I'm almost home. I'm like 10 minutes from the White House. And I'm going to enjoy every second of doing this group because we'll just go live from DC every once in a while you pass good stuff. But this is Scottish Rite, so the Freemasons.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Love and light, y'all.
Yep. But let me go. I'm gonna be here. I'm listening. It's a really good group, so
Awesome.
I'm gonna be
Thanks.
there of you guys. So
Glad to be of service.
Love you, Benny, man. You rule.
you rule, Ed. Fucking yeah, that's my main man there. He's a part of us over here. So
All right. So, I guess we were just discussing about mental disorders, and the Kua was basically saying to respect people's free will and recognize that we're all one, and that it's just, it's just as much a person having a mental disorder as the society having a disorder. And also they said all that is broken will be healed, all is whole, and that all is perfect. And service requires extending yourself, but not overextending to infringe upon free will. And bringing others into the heart allows healing for you, them, and your planet as a whole. So Ed was demonstrating that by saying he loves this person, even though he may not understand what they're going through.
And I really do. And this whole time he was threatening to kill me and all this other stuff. All I was doing was telling him I love him. Yeah, and I was worried and I just want to help him. And like no point was I like fuck no, because I know I could tell what had happened, and all I wanted to do was get through to him that I was not that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it built in his head. Because I say I was really quite traumatized by it. It's a really fucking scary experience. And I've never had an actual kind of escaped mental patient trying to kill me.
Threats mean nothing, Ed. Wait till they try to blow up your damn house.
Synchronicity. Amazing synchronicity.
You want to talk about mental
We're reading about this. Okay.
I was married to one.
Fair enough. All right, Robert. Let's continue reading.
I need to weigh in on something real quick.
Oh, you weigh in. Go ahead.
Just on what Ed was saying about schizophrenia being unique in that it's like a loss of location that occurs within the brain where a person cannot access things that used to be accessible because it's moved. And I've attributed that kind of phenomenon to the fact that we're on a physical planetary body within a solar system that is moving so rapidly that when young people go through the hormonal change, there's some kind of something that happens in space, time, space, that they can lose their connections to so-called reality because of rapid movement of physical bodies. I just wanted to throw that in there.
You know, Robert, that's reminds me of there was this African shaman who went to like a mental hospital in America, and they were like, this patient, he's completely gone, he's going to be schizophrenic for the rest of his life, there's no saving him. But the mother was like, can you do something to help him? And and then he talked to the guy, and he's like, you know what, in Africa we just call these people shaman, we don't call them schizophrenia. And he brought him to Africa, and he lived in their village for a few months, and he came back completely restored and completely sane.
Wow.
Yeah. Ed, go ahead.
Weirdly, back to Tibetan Buddhism, in Tibet and Nepal, when somebody has schizophrenia, when they, whatever, they used to take them to the temple and they'd treat them as an oracle. Because these people, basically what they believed is these people shifted reality from different dimension to different dimension to different plane to different place. And the reason that they keep track of reality was because as they jumped dimension, they had all the memories and all the whatever else from the previous one. So when they jumped over to this one, they could the difference between their reality and the real reality would have been a dimensional shift. And that's why they thought that these people were, oracles, why they used to actually have them kind of, don't get me wrong, they weren't allowed out in society because they were crazy people, but they did keep them there, and they used to record things that they used to say, and they used to kind of treat them with reverence rather than, lock them in a cell, pump them full of drugs, and, tell them there's no hope.
Wish we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would like to add that, well, I haven't heard of the oracle, but in more traditional Tibetan Buddhism and the shamanic cultures of Asia, basically, if a person starts hearing voices in their heads, then that means that they have been chosen to become a shaman. And then they start studying under a shaman, someone who's gone through the same things, and they learn that they are communicating with spirits. Like in Tibetan Buddhism, they're called a dakini, and the dakini is usually of the opposite gender. And so they learn how to completely manage it and how to be of benefit to society. And yeah, it often has an oracle or a prophetic element to it, like even in hill tribes in Asia. Usually the shaman is able to predict many things that are to happen and to explain many phenomenon and to give blessings and all that kind of stuff.
In magic, they call it the head spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Ed knows about that, or the holy guardian angel. It's very similar.
Go ahead, Ed.
I completely refuse to believe that every single shaman ever has got schizophrenia. That's nonsense.
Okay, I hear you. We have a difference of opinion there. All right. So, Robert, would you like to continue reading?
I will continue. And we now have Gary channeling Quo.
Yes.
We are the principle of those known to you as Quo, and it is with And it is with joy that once again we may transmit our thoughts in attempt to be of service to this group's queries, that we may not share the answer to your riddles or untangle the blockages for you, but rather offer that which you may use or not use in order to support your own journey. We would ask again, please, that from these words you distill that meaning that is most resonant for you. Where is it that these words connect to you in your own beingness? What stands out the most? What thread or point of inspiration inspires you to further consideration? At this time, we would open for the next query from the circle. We are those known to you as the principle of Quo.
I would like to preface by saying that this seems to be a question that is shared by many individuals in my home country. So the question is, for those entities who are positively oriented, what would be the best or the correct way to deal with or accept the catalyst, which is the violence and fighting in the Middle East? What can be learned from these occurrences?
We are those of Quo and have received your query, my brother, and we understand that which motivates the asking of this question. For indeed, this catalyst is that which troubles many hearts, both within, as you say, your home country and around your planet as you increasingly move toward cohesion from the disintegration of your planetary complex and become aware of the places in the planetary body that are in conflict and in pain. This place of a wounding and bellicosity, in particular in your world, is one that looms large in the mind of the planetary being. For it is a center from which powerful energies have emerged into your world, both in service to humanity upon the positive path and service to self against humanity upon the negative path. It is a place of long millennia of your time of war among your peoples. It is a place which yearns for peace and the quenching of the fires of those cycles of retribution and animosity of neighbor towards neighbor, but which finds itself also addicted to these cycles, unable seemingly to break them. Some portions even relishing and seeking these cycles, as the pain within is so bright that it must be satisfied by projection outward in the act of scapegoating or vilifying of othering, such that the neighbor becomes the problem which must be solved through suppression or elimination. And a stone is thrown across the boundary, the field, or the space intended for the other side. And pain. Yes.
I was just wondering if we could go back to that previous paragraph. It's just so
it was sad.
So rich. I think. Well, I don't know. Where
very dense.
Mm-hmm. Long millennia of your time, war among your peoples, it is a place which yearns for peace and the quenching of the fires of those cycles of retribution and animosity of neighbor towards neighbor, but which finds itself also addicted to these cycles, unable seemingly to break them, some portions even relishing and seeking these cycles, as the pain within is so bright that it must be satisfied by a projection outward in the act of scapegoating, of vilifying or othering, such that the neighbor becomes the problem, which must be solved through suppression or elimination. So there's this pain that is really bright in these people, and they're not using, the meditation to solve it, but they're instead projecting it out onto others. Okay, all right, thanks. I just wanted to understand that before we kept going. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, also, but that paragraph, that paragraph before that one even spoke of a center within the mind of the planetary being where energies are emerging that are in service to both positive and negative paths. Just the imagery of that was amazing too.
Yeah, for it is a center from which powerful energies have emerged into your world, both in service to humanity upon the positive path and service to self against humanity upon the negative path. And I think that would be like Jesus and the Talmud.
Yeah, where large collective entities emerge. They have a collective power. Yeah.
All right.
And we continue with, and a stone is thrown, and we read that.
We did.
That's right. And
we started reading it. Okay.
Yeah. And a stone is thrown across the boundary, the field, or the space intended for the other side. and pain is received. And thus the stone is picked up and another one added and thrown back against the other self and the other group self, each side or sides or factions locked seemingly in stories of righteousness and vengeance that remain unable to hear and empathize with the lived experience of they who are othered. It is a disintegrated state, and through those fault lines where disharmony reigns, bellows the fires of animosity and fear of the other group, of the other self, and non-acceptance of the ways of the other selves, be that their belief systems, their culture, or their ways of being and seeking the Creator. We wish not to indicate that this is simply a matter of an equality of differences unrecognized across various group lines. For within those differences have been planted deeply the seeds which encourage either the elitism or the stripping of the human dignity and worth and value of the non-believer. Ideologies, our friends, are also programming mechanisms. And to the extent that the self has not awoken and come into contact with that inner light that calls the self to conscious work in the heart, to analysis of one's belief systems, but instead exercises total identification with the ego, as you may call it, the separate self, one remains an unconscious agent or mechanism of systems of ideology that compel the self into righteous holy war, with surety even of advancement into a place in the afterlife for acts of harm to neighbor against neighbor. This is a situation with roots and seeds that go back into, as you would see it at your present nexus, olden times, as we have said. But you ask not for a historical understanding precisely, but the more fundamental, and if we may qualify, better question of how does the entity who is consciously upon the positively oriented path relate to this catalyst? How does the positive entity serve others in this circumstance or in relationship to this circumstance? How does one use one's catalyst of this particular flavor? And my brother, we would remind you and all who may hear or read these words that catalyst holds up a mirror for the self to see its self, whether that is the catalyst of your wars in that region you call the Middle East, or the marital catalyst, or the economic catalyst, and so forth. The self is called to look at and identify what is arising within the self. What are the self's reactions? We correct this instrument, to begin the process of understanding, shall we say, these reactions and seeing them, there is the necessity of feeling these responses within the being. This feeling is an act of opening the heart to one's own catalyst, that is, to feel it vulnerably, to feel it without manipulation, to feel the catalyst for what it is, to face it squarely, whatever that may look like, even if there seems to be great sorrow and despair. The feeling of this catalyst puts the self and the mind and the body, and in the more contemplative practices, the spirit into contact with the catalyst, allowing its space to be within the self so that it may impart its message to the self about who and what the self is, so that this catalyst may point to the work that is asking to be done within the self. It is to the maturing, positively polarizing entity that the self recognizes that the origin of this catalyst, even if seemingly caused by wars and geopolitics, is forever and always within the self. Events are as they are within the world. Other selves, seemingly external to the self, will exercise their free will as they will in harmony or disharmony. It may have various material effects upon the self within the political or social or economic realms, and so forth. But the inner response to this happening or event is of the self's own making, in most cases, of an unconscious nature. In your world, one is generally not consciously choosing how to react, but rather is navigating how best to respond to the reaction that is already bubbling up from deep unconscious springs within the self. Whatever the proximate trigger of this catalyst, the work is, as we have described many times, that of love and acceptance, and connected to and manifestations of this energy of loving acceptance, including forgiveness, compassion, and mercy. This is, in fact, one of the most powerful ways that the seemingly powerless third density entity may help the healing of this region by, in a disciplined fashion, working upon their own catalyst, that they may claim responsibility for their own inner reality and find where there is war within the self, where there is judgment within the self, where there is desire to right the wrongs through force. And taking notice of where the self gets hooked into anger, into the narratives that lock your peoples into conflict generally, and this conflict specifically. We do not mean to imply that these narratives, these histories are unimportant or can be brushed away with the waving of the hand as illusory. Rather, to the positive entity, we counsel to see how they are being moved by such stories, and whether that is leading toward a deepening and expanding of love, or whether it is leaning towards decreasing the circle of compassion, of setting up camps of identity or categories within the mind of they who are less than the creator, or other than the creator, versus they who are able to be seen as being in common to the self. See where these responses are emerging within the being, and where the self notices the energies of the separation arising. The self has found where there is work to do, be it upon the positive path, be it one who wishes to know the Creator more fully within and as the self. For it is a long journey of integration, this path of seeking and becoming one. It is a long journey of learning to accept that which has been rejected, that which is seen as other than self. It is a long journey to bring this all into the heart. This does not mean that one agrees with any particular narrative, but rather that one sees who and what those entities are who are trapped within these dreams within dreams of hell and war. One sees the oneness. One feels the oneness. One knows through disciplined work over time that they are one with these other beings, be the Arab or Jew or other. This is you. This is the Creator. And this awareness toward which our mere words point is more powerful and radiant when truly realized within the self through the gateway than any of our words or any words generally can describe. The light, which is automatically generated by this knowing of the self and other selves as the creator, is that which dispels that darkness that creates the environment within which these wars perpetuate. You, our friends, and all who have responded to the call of their own inner lights have a power which you have barely begun to sense and tap. It is not a power to control. It is not a power that lifts the self upon the pedestal for all to give in glory to. It is a humble power, but it is one which the self, increasingly rendered transparent through the work of love and acceptance, becomes a portal, you might say, for the creator to stream into the dream within which those of your people sleep and enact suffering upon suffering. But even long before this deeper or greater realization, there is the simple act of allowing empathy to flood into the heart, even and especially for those perceived to have done wrong, even if, by the interpersonal standards of your society, others have done wrong or have committed crime or injustice, to allow empathy to permeate and transcend these mental categories, and to see those who suffer and recognize the suffering for suffering, to see those who, as you would say, are caught in the crossfires, those who wish only to live a life in pursuit of those values that are true across the world, of raising the family, of seeing the children grow, of tending to the community, of being of service. How many within your world, time and time again, are subject to those who wish to fight again and again and again? You asked also, what is there to learn? And my brother, we cannot do the learning for your peoples. We can suggest, however, that in learning to find love, even when there is a bellicosity present, is a key lesson of your world. And we may say that this particular region of your planet offers the chance for global healing, for it has served as something of a microcosm of the dynamics that have plagued and infected your peoples with separation and animosity. We do not have that key for you which would untangle these seemingly intractable knots, these conundrums and problems and paradoxes that trouble the best of your minds. But we say to you that within the open heart and the higher awareness that begins to unlock, as that heart is expanded into unconditional and universal love, miracles are possible. And at this time, we would ask if there is another query to which we may respond. We are those known to you as Quo.
All right. Wow. Wow. That was
Yeah.
interesting. Ashley, did you want to comment on this? I just felt like you have. Go ahead.
I don't have anything like major to add, just that it's very relevant for our times currently, where everyone wants to know like what they can do to affect mass events, and always it comes back to what's in the self. It comes back to what's in your own heart, and we might see our smaller interactions and our smaller experiences where we work through catalysts and face our shadow as meaningless, but actually there's a larger purpose to that, because as the text is saying, whenever we find that peace within ourselves, when we end the bloodshed and the war within our minds, bodies, and spirits, collectively we begin to kind of push the needle towards ending a need for that external expression of those internal wars multiplied by the billions of people that need to manifest in 3D, to kind of stimulate those changes internally. So it just makes perfect sense, and it's an empowering bit of information, and kind of gives hope to those who can't like be out on the front lines and helping those and ending the wars with their own two hands. This is a way that we do it. What we see physically is always an expression of something internal first. That's all.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful reflection. Fred, go ahead.
Just to piggyback on what Ashley was saying, the other night we were talking about the Raw session. I think it was what 43. Ashley, if you remember, I don't remember.
Yeah,
43
I think
something.
43.5 through
Yeah,
like 43.8. Yeah.
they were mentioning the cattle mutilations and how the negative beliefs, the belief systems associated with the different organs perpetuated the use of the negative entities to use that as a tool to specify those organs just because of the spiritual significance of them, and utilize that as their basically, what Andrii, I think you call them, what the space pirates or whatever, they feed on that energy. Well, if they can do that with exacting precision with our negative thought forms and our negative thought patterns, we can do the same thing with positive, and we can exact very specific positive responses and actions and reactions and responses by focusing that energy on it. And we have done that in the past. I mean, whenever you see something where someone invokes the name of Jesus and it, quells a situation, you're invoking that positive energy associated with that name. And we can do the same thing with anything. You can even make it silly, but still the idea is that it's intention on purpose with that direction, and you can do those things. It's just the most difficult thing, I think, in this 3D, with it being so thick and so dense, is just convincing people that that's what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
Nice bong, Adam. I'm jelly.
You just made me laugh. I squirted it back in the bowl.
Oh no.
When you said you were here trying to convince people, I thought it was funny.
Yeah. So actually, this reminds me. Just yesterday. Ed is back. It was this week. Anyways, I was cycling by the soup kitchen that was closed, and someone was arguing about how they had many negative feelings towards someone stealing their things, and so I told them about seek first the kingdom, and all else will be given to you. In forgiveness, love, and kindness for all, in Jesus' name. And I hope it helped quell the situation. But it's just like a small act of kindness. Go ahead, Bene.
All I really want to know, what is Martha's Table? It's right down the street from where I live in DC. So I could look it up, have it, but I mean,
Martha's Vineyard?
No, Martha's Table.
Not Martha's Table. No, I'm not sure where that is.
Yeah. But there's lines going 2-3 blocks to it. I mean,
oh wow.
I think it's some type of soup kitchen, but I'm not sure.
So. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you could look it up and tell us. Ed?
I could, but I got a phone.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Ed? I can try to look it up while Ed is responding. Ed, are you? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry,
Can you?
press the wrong
What
button
did
when
you
I
want to say?
cut out. Okay,
You're
so
breaking
I've
up.
got a friend who.
Okay. Go. All we heard was you've got a friend, and then it cut off. Okay. Well, sorry, Ed, but we can't hear you. It says you have a very poor connection, and so
And
so I've looked up Martha's table, and here it says education, food, opportunity, children's education, nutrition, and clothing, nonprofit, charity volunteer center in the Washington D.C. area. There you go. So they're doing a contribution for good. There you go. They're recognizing the divine in all of these people and that they are worth having food and clothing and education.
Say that myself, and they definitely bang to the rap music when I'm driving by in my diesel. I only bought the diesel, because I had the two horns on it. I wasn't nobody ever told me diesel was racist. So, when I bought the diesel, friggin', I got backlash for weeks, but then people started bursting out loud because I didn't know. I bought a work truck. So,
Fair enough.
friggin'.
Yeah,
It's
we gotta. We're always improving. We're always learning and growing and improving and seeing how best we can be of service.
Well, it's my dad's friend that told me to buy it after your Hot Boy Summer. So that's all I can tell you.
Fair enough. So if we look at the session here, conflict as catalyst. External conflicts mirror internal divisions.
What?
That's
I didn't start talking.
Edward. Oh, there you are. Oh, we can finally hear you. Oh, Edward, you turned off your microphone and your video.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Yeah, Ed. Okay, Ed turned off again. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now
yes,
we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Awesome. Yay, wonderful. Okay, so I have a friend who is really big into the whole war thing in the Middle East. He's really kind of, every single time I see him, he's got loads more stuff to say about it. But I said to him that, especially this relates to the Red Cord channeling as well, that war is just sacrifice, and when people come here, when they sign up for this incarnation, they know that there's going to be a war here when they move into that area. They come here for a specific reason. Why would anybody do that? Well, because of the fact that, the act of being blown up, the act of seeing kids all crying, going down the street, that right there inspires emotion in everybody. That is catalyst. That is exactly that. The empathy that we feel for those children on the roads, or for the people getting blown, however it affects us. It affects us. And one of the most important things I think that was said in that whole bit is that it essentially could be the catalyst that makes the whole world embrace peace. Now that is awesome.
Interesting point, Ed. Yeah, it is a very powerful catalyst, and some souls may feel that they need that kind of powerful catalyst, or that they want to be of service in such a difficult location. I know that's not for me, but kudos to those people who are serving in that way. So Catalyst holds up a mirror for the self to see itself. The self is called to look at and identify what is arising within. And feel the catalyst for what it is, to face it squarely, even if there seems to be a great sorrow and despair. Fred, go ahead.
Speaking of catalyst, Amy is trying to get in and she's having trouble. I think she wants to ask a question, but she can't. I don't think she can get in the meeting.
Amy is trying.
Speaking of catalyst, dude, you're hilarious.
Well, she's
Okay.
having Catalyst.
Oh, well, can you tell her to call the number?
I said she can join the meet. We're in the meeting now, and she can eat, but I don't think she can. I don't think she has anything on her phone to get her to Jitsi, is what I'm saying. So she,
Okay.
I think she's confused.
Okay, here. I will just tell her to dial the number. I know she has trouble with technology.
So don't be bashing it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm an IT professional.
I know.
Call in.
That's like me making fun
Okay.
of you because you can't weld.
Yeah, well, I could solder. I could solder.
Yeah. I just want to make sure she gets, if she has a question, she can get it answered because
Yeah. I told her she can call in because we've tried getting her to do the link thing for many times, but she's never managed to do it. Here, this is some soldering that I did. I put the header pins on.
I got her to connect once to Jitsi, but it wasn't during a meeting. It was just to get her phone activated to the app itself. But she must have lost it, erased it, or forgot how to do it.
Yeah. I concur. I believe that's one of those. All right. So I gave her the number, so she can call in if she wants. No, so facing Catalyst fully, feel the Catalyst for what it is. Okay, yeah, we did that. Healing begins within. Find where there is war within the self, where there is judgment or desire to right wrongs through force. Yeah. For me, the hardest thing is like, I just feel so upset about conscription, but so that's where it is for me. And I just want peace. I don't want, people to be forced into death against their will. Allow empathy to flood into the heart, even especially for those perceived to have done wrong. So yeah, and I, for me, that would be like, the people doing the conscripting, and for the people promoting the war and perpetuating conflict. And yeah, it can be difficult, like how do we forgive and love those people? Anyone have anything for that? Want to help me?
What war are you talking about?
I'm talking about the war in Ukraine, because the war in the Middle East, like, it's easy for me to forgive and love those people. I barely even know them, but in the war in Ukraine,
that's a war in Iran is coming up. So if you look at it, they're taking out all their proxies, and then the next thing that's going to happen is, we got to take the nuclear weapon from them. So, I mean, and I know that for a fact from people I've talked to, that I know, but
okay,
I
Ashley
do
would like.
agree with you. But what can I ask you a question? What happens if it isn't conscriptions? We're going to do all these mass deportations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got all these young men willing, either to rebuild the infrastructure, maybe go into healthcare, public, government healthcare, stuff like that. What happens if they join the military for that? So, their families can get citizenship, stuff like that. That would be one huge thought for next week in front of the White House. That's all I can tell you. So, if you want to go to the White House, the Washington Monument, I literally live 10 minutes from everything. So, I'm right down here. So, friggin',
Cool.
let's keep that as a thought, going into the new administration. And I do believe people will hear you 100%. So,
Well, Ashley wants to speak right now. I don't know. I wanted to hear what she has to say. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say, I agree that it is hard when you actually have other selves that you know personally in their current incarnations, and you know they're suffering, it does change the dynamic and gets even more intense catalytically for you to be able to step over that threshold into understanding for the other self that's persecuting the other self that you know and love dearly. That's very hard and it's very intense. And it's not something that happens overnight to be able to get over that. I think, as Cole was saying, it's important and a part of the process to feel that frustration, feel that hurt, feel that maybe anger, and let it see what it brings up in you. You can like write it out or talk it out, like how it how it's affecting you, and then also speak to the opposite of that. Okay, I'm aggravated, I'm frustrated, I'm hurt, but what is the opposite of that? What does it look like for me to, you don't even have to have your full heart in it at first. Just try to get into the headspace of what does it look like for me to have compassion for the oppressor? What does it look like for me to have love for the brother who is killing my brother that I know? If you can see that, just see it and see yourself hugging or shaking hands with or having a dialogue with the other, what we perceive to be the enemy. Just the visual of that every so often, even if you can do it for 10 seconds one time, then 20 seconds another time. And each time you do it, the first time you may have a really violent response and your image might turn into you throwing them over the table or pulling your hand away or yelling at them. And when you're trying to have this other kind of visualization, but each time you do that exercise, you'll become more and more involved in it with your emotional body. And then before you realize it, you've been able to balance the two. And then another thing I would say is that for me, I I get to the point where I have to love unity more than I love my negative emotions. And for me, I do love the love more than I love the anger. I do love the unity and the sense of completeness when I have both light and dark in my embrace than when I have only light in my embrace. There's this feeling that something is missing, and it's so intense that I have to step over that threshold or else I won't feel right. Something will be wrong. I need both with me, the light and the dark, the love and the hate. There has to be unity. And when you love that more than you love your anger, love that more than you love your frustration, that's when you're able to make that change. But it's not easy. Not at all.
No, it's not. And it's like I hear what you're saying, and I mean in theory, I mean yes, I agree, but then it's just like how, like I mean like it's a person who, like, is this a person, like I can love them as a person and I know they may have their own rationalizations for supporting the abduction and murder of my relatives, but how, like it's just so hard, like to
I don't
forgive and love
even
them. And
try to I don't even try to think about why they've done or do what they do. I don't find that to be beneficial for me. I feel like you make yourself more upset when you try to intellectualize their decision,
Yeah.
because even their decision isn't super intellectualized. They're playing out themes that are coming from a really deep subconscious construct in their own selves that not even they understand. Because if they did understand it, they wouldn't even be playing that out on that polarity anyway, if they truly understand. So they don't understand it. So we definitely won't understand it. So I never try to think about, well, why are they killing? It it doesn't matter why. It doesn't change what they're doing, and that doesn't make it more palatable for me.
Mhm. Okay, Fred, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to avoid then is, you remember the link I sent you, Andrii, where that guy that makes clay sculptures of somebody you're mad at in perfect rendition of them, and then you get to beat them up, like
Yeah.
as an anger management thing, where that's intellectualizing the reasons. It's the same thing. You're intellectualizing it, where for just now, this is just my example. Anybody can do this differently, but how I handled it, I had an extreme catalyst with someone, being violent towards me, and it didn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's not going to make any sense. So what I had to ask was, I want to see the energy behind the actions of everything that was happening. And in the visualization that I got, it broke my heart. There's no more hate. There's anger about the action because of the repercussions it has on other people, not really against the person committing it. But wow, was that diffusing to just be given a glimpse of this little bit that we are able to understand of, in our 3D with just our eyes and our ears and our five senses. But if you're able to get a glimpse of the pain and the contortion and the distortion that someone is actually able to do something, whether it's violent or angry or jealousy or whatever the reason, the emotion behind it, when you have to understand the complexity of the distortion that has to be in place for that person to actually go through all of that. That's where you can really start to, from the root of your own being, begin to truly express love that's balanced and wise, where you're not putting yourself up as a martyr, and you're not just running away from it either. You're actually dealing with it.
Okay. Well, I think maybe I have to, I guess, make a confession or whatever. I don't know how you call it, but basically, I had posted, on my Facebook, uh, gratitude that the peacemakers had won the election, and then Linda Hoagland commented that, oh, the Ukrainians, that he's just going to side with Putin, and that the Ukrainians are just defending themselves. And I just totally lost it. I just totally lost it. And I was just so furious. I said some very mean things, because it, it's just, it's just so hard for me to understand how someone could be promoting, the killing of my relatives by promoting this war to go on. And
Yeah, it's personal. You
yeah,
understand why not to. You can't understand why somebody would want
yeah,
to.
exactly, and it's just been so hard. It's been something that I've been processing for a while, that I've had trouble. And thank you guys for your input, and hopefully I'll get to a place of peace and reconcile with Linda at some point. But for me, it's just so hard right now.
We
I
love you,
think it's
Andrii.
okay to
Yes.
not. Yes,
Thank
we
you.
love you times a million, and we're here for you. And I think it's okay when you're in the catalytic river like you are. I think it's okay to not be okay with that. That's okay. There's no reason that you have to push your heart through what is clearly something very trying at this time. Sometimes it's about the experience itself, the experience of true heartbreak and sorrow, and the true contending with uh, all that you're going through, like the frustration, the anger, the hurt. Sometimes just that experience in and of itself is the purpose, not not yet for you to just move past it and get over it. I don't think that's the goal, and that's okay. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ed?
Yeah, Andre, I think the reason you feel these things so hard, man, is because it is really huge catalyst for you, dude. The reason that you're finding it hard to kind of move past and find compassion and that, like, can I just say though, like with all of these things, when you're looking at war reporting and you're looking at whatever else, remember, dude, it's all propaganda, man. It's all the. I don't know, man. Look. I know people are dying and everything. But I know. I also don't believe that there's any real governments anymore. They're all one people. They're doing it to each other. There's no sides. Yeah, there's sacrifices.
And
I feel
I
sorry
think
for the
that
people, dude. I'm not saying nothing, but none of the people in charge care about anybody.
that's why we have to promote peace, love and kindness. And I think
I
that's
know,
the
dude, and that's what I'm saying.
only
That's why
purpose.
you are finding it hardest, because for you, it's just like, why are you doing this to each other?
All right. Well,
But
it's
thank
9
you for
o'clock,
sharing.
guys.
Thank you for sharing that, though, Andrii. That's powerful message. And I want to tell you something. This is not meant to sound like gossip or anything, but you had a moment of antagonism with Linda regarding this. And 3 days before the election, I don't think you were there for a Saturday morning session, but she was saying they're going to move to Costa Rica if so-and-so is elected.
Oh, I see.
See, they're willing to leave the country behind just because of one individual. So just kind of take that in mind as to where they're coming from in regards to this whole picture.
So, Andre, does that mean you're more conservative?
Well, I guess you could say that. I mean, yeah, I live in a rural area, so I think that makes you conservative by default.
I see. I think a lot of L&L researchers' board is Democratic. They're on the left.
Yes.
I think so. That's just kind of part of it. So we gotta find some evening out of getting the other side in there to a degree.
They're learning. They are accepting. They're working on shadow self with that as a group. They really are, and it's lovely to watch. I'm trying to be neutral in this whole thing myself, and I've been accepting of either side, whatever in this argument. But the group is growing and learning, and they are ascending. It's a good process. It's painful for them right now. Painful for me to watch, but but I'm just loving them and just hanging out with them still, and they are deserving of that. So.
Yeah, it just so happened that I was busy for the last 2 Tuesdays, so I haven't met up with them to see their feelings. But I think I'll be there on Tuesday and maybe help out as well as what I can. All right.
Don't mean to be weird, but has anyone heard from Des? I miss her.
I had no news. I heard basically the last time she was here, she said that she was working Fridays.
Well, I'm in personal contact with her on occasion, and that's the key word, personal. She's undergoing things in her life which are very challenging and large catalysts. She's growing. She's in her mid-30s. She's in a time of growth in her life. She's a wonderful being, just on her own path, and just send her love. And I know you love her. Okay. She's a lovable.
She knows I love her, dude. If you speak to her, man, just pass it on. I miss her.
Yeah, she's a great person. She's just going through her own stuff right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we wish her well. All right.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell her that. I will. She doesn't really talk to me much either, but she's very private right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And we love and accept her, whatever she's going through, and however it is. And I wanted to apologize if in any way I offended her, or through what I was talking about of spiritual healing and things like that, because I wanted to emphasize that we can never judge anyone else based on what they're going through, because what they're going through, it could be pre-incarnative choice. It's between them and the Creator what they're going through.
Right.
And we just have to forgive and love them, and we cannot judge at all. We have to work on ourselves, on being kind and loving within ourselves and to those around us as best we can.
Yeah. And that describes even our feelings of, like, on that topic of war and Ukraine and Russia and stuff. It's your unique path. None of us can really tell you how to deal with this. We will love you. We will try to support you, give you ideas, whatever. Because there was great wisdom delivered in tonight's session between us and Quo and all that. It was awesome. But it's still up to you, and it's your path. And all we can do is be supportive of your choices. And
well, thank you. Here, I think these quotes are nice.
I was gonna say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Give me the credit if you want. I was just going to say, this conversation that I was having with my friend, I told you I've got a friend that's all really obsessed with the whole kind of, not the Ukraine one, the
Middle East.
The Middle East one. And I keep saying to him about the Book of Revelations, about how it talks about how, like, it doesn't look good for Jerusalem if you go by what the text says. And I don't know whether, like, is that where we're heading? Are we actually, like, right there, right at the end of days?
So, well,
you get what I'm saying, right?
To give my 2 cents on this is that Revelation, for many historical people, says that much of it has already occurred, has already passed in the early... because Jerusalem was already destroyed in 70 AD and 130 AD. So it was like destroyed twice by the Romans, and then it was gone. And then it was said, the dragon or Satan was bound for 1,000 years. And for 1,000 years, over 1,000 years, Jewish people were basically slaves to the kings in Western Europe, and they were not allowed to do anything. And it was only post-Enlightenment that things started to get, like, more freed up. And then only very recently has Israel been recreated, and like and in the Revelation says the devil was let loose for a little while, and so I think that's the period that we're at now. But there's many ways of interpreting it. Go ahead, Robert.
No, but yeah, your input was perfect. And Ed, that's I've been studying that for decades, the Book of Revelation. For longer than you've been alive, actually. Most scholars truly think of Revelation as, like Andrii has said, already has occurred. But what a lot of them don't take into effect here is something that is mentioned in Quo's channelings. And I'm not sure if Ra even mentioned it. How, like, our personal catalyst will come back around, like spiral back into our life. As we're ascending on a spiral going ever upward, there are certain points within the spirals that are, like, connected where that catalyst can reoccur. And the events of Revelation of 2,000 years ago, it might be spiraling back to be on a higher level, but the same catalyst. So it doesn't mean it was a do-all, end-all 2,000 years ago. It could be a reoccurring phenomenon. That's my personal viewpoint on that for a while now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, Robert, that catalyst does reoccur until it's processed effectively.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the cycles we see through history of the Jewish people getting their own state, then being really mean to all of their neighbors, and then being put into bondage, and then it just keeps happening. Okay, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like the same cycle keeps going over and over and over again. Was it Tom of the Nine that says that essentially they're like the bottleneck for all of us? So
I haven't heard of that one.
must have read Tom of the Nine, man. Like the Only Planet of Choice channeling.
I tried reading it, but it
It's
wasn't.
wonderful.
It wasn't up to par of the Confederation. I was just like,
I think there's bits in it that are incredible, but the whole anti-Semitic bit not quite so great. But what they say is that essentially that when Jesus turned up, they were supposed to turn their back on the covenant. They were all supposed to essentially go and start worshipping Creator, but instead they stayed worshipping with monoatheism, and then Christianity became monoatheism rather than pantheism, like the Law of One is. So essentially, because of the fact that the Jews didn't turn to pantheism when Jesus turned up, we're now still stuck in this monoatheism paradigm, which has screwed us.
So I would like to clarify that if you actually get into Jesus's teachings, then it is pantheism. But the Christians don't like to call it that. They call it panentheism. All is within God. Yes, they make this tiny distinction, and then it makes them happy. If you call it panentheism, they will be like, yeah, 2 thumbs up. That's what Christianity is.
How is it any different?
Well, it means that all is within God.
I thought that was a spelling mistake. I didn't realize that was a whole different thing.
No, it's not a whole different thing. It's just how Christians write it to make it so that they feel it's acceptable.
Because Jesus' teachings, when you look at them, pretty much all of them are pantheistic. Like not many of them.
All is God.
Some of them can be looked at monotheistically, but they're not really. You know, but Christianity is monoatheistic. It's not really.
Well,
I think you. What is that? What?
Panentheistic.
Panentheistic. Yeah. Oh, that's pedantic, if you ask me.
Yes, it is. It is. But I've read books where they try to parse the difference, but it's not. It's a distinction without a difference. But basically, it depends on your denomination as well. That there's like Anabaptists, they fully acknowledge that the divine is within us and all around us. So that is pantheism or panentheism. All is God. All right, guys. So any closing remarks before we close the session?
Anyone hanging out?
I'll leave the chat open for you guys. Okay, so
all is one.
Amen. And so, as we found you, leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator, the one within you, my friends. Adonai Vasubragas. All right.